So this isn't true every single time, but typically if I go on a bushcrafting specific trip, I have a hard time deciding between one of two blades, whether that's a small knife, a medium knife, or a large knife. And sometimes I'll do a big one and a small one and pair those up. Maybe have kind of a side knife or an in the pocket kind of fixed blade, because I prefer fixed blades overall. Might have something like that, and then the big knife in the pack. Some variation of that very often. But I just wanted to talk to you about a few of them. Starting off, okay, LT Wright pronghorn. So I don't think this is the sheath for it. I think that's a sheath for a different LT Wright knife. But this pronghorn is in double red. I've talked about it before. It's an 01 blade actually. And the spine is all beat up because I will use this to actually spark rocks off of and try lighting punky wood and things like that. It's not the biggest handle, but it is just super comfortable for some reason. And it's really easy to touch up and sharpen. I've always really liked this blade quite a bit. And it's not overly thick, which is important to me. I actually carve a lot with this knife when I'm out in the woods, but it's been a good all-arounder, and because it's 01 and it's an affordable knife, you know, I don't feel bad ripping into this thing and beating it up a little bit. That's a really good blade. But I also might prefer to carry this, especially if I need a flat grind or I prefer a Kydex sheath, and this does add some value to the package for me. This is a mini Pendleton Hunter from Cold Steel. Obviously this is fairly impervious to elements. I mean, if I keep it dry, OS 10 is pretty good overall. The handle scales are excellent when they're wet or you're using it to skin, they get bloody. But a full flat grind sometimes just wins the day for me for a pocket carry. If I'm going to process food or do a lot of utility things, I actually EDC this all the time just on my own, especially because of the ulti clip that I put on this. And this is a, I can't remember the maker of this Kydex. I don't have a connection with them, but I went with the woodland camo combination. It actually rides really nice in the pocket. And it's one of the only sheaths that's made this knife work for me because the factory sheath is crap. But I like this one quite a bit. That's another one. When it comes to small blades, typically I'm trying to choose between those two. Let's go up to medium-sized blades. So here is, everybody knows, an LT Wright Genesis. This one happens to be an A2. So A2 is really easy to touch up. I have a number of blades in A2, and it takes a razor edge. I think it's the grain structure, the way that it's built. This one happens to not have liners. It's a very simple Genesis, but it is in the red. I don't think this one's double red. I think this one's just the red micarta. It tends to be a little bit more expensive because of that, but I love the classic look and the classic lines of this knife. Incredibly sharp, and this one oftentimes wins out, but I don't always want the weight. This one's just a touch heavier and a touch bigger than another mid-sized knife that I like to carry, and this one's a custom from Bear Force Knives. And so this is also in Kydex. It's going to have that same advantage over the other. So I like in the pocket carry. This has a front pocket carry, and I can actually do that with this knife. Set that down for a second. So this is made in America as well as the LT Wright, but it's a little lighter and it's a little smaller. It's still robust enough, but it does have a hybrid grind, which allows for some different things, and it carves extremely well. I found that this is a comfortable handle, and it just seems to work really good for every trip I've been on. I don't have many complaints for a blade like this at all. So big fan of this one. It usually comes down to probably the Genesis or this simple knife variant that I have right here from BFK. You can check those out. He's got more of those in stock, I believe, right now, as well as a Gen 3 coming out. When it comes to big knives, especially in the winter time, I've used reef knives for a while. This is a Reef Knives F6 Leicu. This one happens to be in, see if you can see that there, Magna Cut. I'm a big fan. I know Magna Cut is controversial amongst other people, but it's not for me. I'm a huge fan of Magna Cut. I love the handle scales on Reef knives, and this combination has been excellent. It is a leather sheath, but I found the retention to be pretty good, and I can get a fire steel on there. When it comes to winter blades, I always have to have a fire steel with those. It's just my own personal preference. Handle scales meet up pretty good all across this blade, and it received some abuse and just kept on trucking. So I'm a big fan of Reef knives. This one, because of the grind, the strength, the design, especially the handle, comfort of that, this often wins out in winter time. And I've got more than one F6, but this one right here is kind of my go-to now when it comes to a Reef Knives blade. Lastly, another LT Wright, and this one is not in Kydex. It might be in the future, but this is also something I carry in leather. And this is the LT Wright Illuminous. This one is in 3V. So 3V and MagnaCut, I like them both quite a bit. 3V has some advantages, MagnaCut has some advantages. This one, handle-wise, is just a touch bigger, a little more stout of a blade as far as the handle is concerned, just slightly, which is really saying something because they're both excellent. Stock thickness is going to be similar or same. And this one is a Scandi, so if I feel like I need to do a little bit more bushcrafty kind of things and less of the quote-unquote survival stuff, I like to go to a Scandi blade. I like that this resembles the Genesis a little bit, and it does come down to a very center point here, but it's not a weak blade by any means, and so I can pound on it. It just does have that 0 to grind, basically a 0 degree angle, slight micro bevel at the edge, and the handle is incredibly comfortable. And I've carved with this. I was where did I put that? I was working on a spoon just earlier, so I'm not done with it by any means, but I was working on a spoon. So you can do bigger tasks, or smaller tasks rather, with a bigger blade like this, and it's competent. It's not overly long, but in comparison to the reef knives, they're actually, I can just show you that, handles, they're pretty similar. Not the same, but pretty similar. And actually blade lengths here, let's do this. Blade lengths, the F6 is just a touch longer. So some advantages there, but there are some options you guys might want to consider. More videos probably coming out on both these blades pretty soon.